Welcome back. Now, majority of the opposition political parties were quick to point out that President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address was riddled with lies and empty promises. Build One South Africa is no different in its reaction to the speech on Thursday. Joining us in studio to analyze Ramaphosa's Sona is Bosa Head of Communication, Ayanda Allie. Ayanda, thank you so much for joining us on News at Prime and coming into studio. Let's get straight into it. You had, like the other opposition parties as well, quite a fiery reaction to the State of the Nation address that was delivered on Thursday. And one of the things you said was that not only was it riddled with lies, but the president was undermining the intelligence of South Africans. Tell us more.
Absolutely. I think it was somewhat of a wish list of what could be if one were to close one's eyes and just say, let me dream about the South Africa that we had. He spoke at the beginning about, the minerals that we have and how they are benefiting South Africans. And it begs the question, how are we transporting those minerals when our railway sector is struggling as it is and Transnet is in the dire shape that it is? And I think it's so important that we mention the fact that this is a South Africa that, yes, has got so much promise, has got so much in terms of human capital, in terms of resources, but that is failing to live up to its potential. It is not where it could be. It is no longer the gateway to the continent. I mean, even our ports are no longer preferred as an entrance for those who bring in cargo and goods. So this is a South Africa that is struggling, but that has tremendous potential if we have the right leadership. So we just listened to the statement of the president, and we just had to shake our heads and think this is definitely not the same South Africa that we're living in.
Two different realities seems to be the common reaction that, the speech sounded like something out of La La Land and not anything out of reality land. Now, when you heard of the tale of Dintswalo, what did you make of that?
Look, I think if we sit down and we say the ANC government has done nothing, that would be an absolute lie. We do realize that they've reduced the rate of mother-to-child transmission. We do acknowledge that there are social grants that are assisting. But I think what our argument was, that we should not sit back and just be grateful because of the service that we've received, instead of sitting and saying, yes, you have delivered 1, 2, and 3, but you are the cause of the malfunction itself. Masa, you see the studio is nicely lit up. If I walk in the studio and I switch off the light, and then I offer you a candle and I say, I've intervened, I've given you a little bit of light, here's a candle, and then I expect to be praised because of the candle that I give you, and go forth and say, I will even switch the light back on, these are my achievements. No remorse, no conclusion that I am the cause of the problem. That's what we're seeing here. The reason why you have to give social grants is because you've not grown the economy to such an extent where people can have jobs. The reason why you have to give free housing is because after 30 years, you have not empowered and enabled the populace to be able to buy their own homes and build their own homes. The reason why you can wax lyrical about a Dintswalo who is receiving so much from the state is because you have failed in 30 years to raise a child who can be self-sufficient all those times. In essence, what the ANC government has done is create a dependency syndrome where South Africans are holding their hands like this, a begging bowl mentality, looking towards the state for any resources. Surely you cannot celebrate that. You're the one who caused the problem. You're the one who walked into the studio and switched off the light. Why must we praise you for the meager crumbs, the candle that you provide?
Congratulating a fish for swimming type of thing. Now, Ayanda, let's talk about the new kids on the block. We know what the problems are. They've been fleshed out heavily well. Bosa has entered the fore now. What is Bosa offering if you had to compare it with the other new kids on the block? The South Africans are spoiled for choice when it comes to these general elections. There is a new political party, it seems, popping up every fortnight or so. How would you differentiate Bosa from Arise Mzansi, Sarah, Change Now, Roger Jardine's party, and so on, and MK and the likes?
I think what's important about what we've done is we've created a model. And the fact that other people are following suit is actually quite flattering and shows us that we are on the right track. We have asked South Africans to give us leaders that are tried, tested, and true. We want a leadership that is based on meritocracy as opposed to who you know or whether or not you can buy votes. We've said we want people who have already been on the ground. These are people in civil society, in academia, in law, in the healthcare sector, who are using their own funds to bring about a change in the society. And we've said, come, we will give you a platform where we can work together to change policy, to boost implementation, to make sure that we build the South Africa that we want from the bottom up. And I think that's very important, because these are leaders that are not just sitting there waiting for a paycheck. These are leaders who have taken initiative in and of themselves. We're based on the principle of Ubuntu, which means we recognize that I am because you are. And whatever needs to happen in South Africa is not going to be because of some high and lofty person who's sitting in an air-conditioned room looking down on the populace saying, I'm going to help you. We've then said all South Africans must rise up, hold hands, and we work together. Those are just some of the things that we're putting into place to make sure that there is a responsible, accountable, ethical leadership at the helm. If we sort out the leadership crisis that we have in South Africa, many of the issues that we face as a country will be resolved.
Speaking of leadership, the leader of your political party, he used to be the leader of the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance. How much of his stance when he did advocate for that party, when it was his political home, where he did advocate for their policies and their visions and their values, how much of that residue is left in your political party leader? What distinguishes Bosa from the DA?
I think it's important to note that what that gives him is experience. A lot of the new parties that have come up now do not know what it's like to walk through the corridors of Parliament and have to fight and have to speak about coalition agreements and have to work and collaborate with people. A lot of them don't know what it means to mobilize people of different races, different ethnicities, different religions and beliefs, and be able to build one entity that is able to move people forward. Mmusi Maimane has that in the experience that he's had at the Democratic Alliance, and in fact, even at the ANC, and I don't know how many people know that, because when he then felt the leadership in him rise to say, let's do something, he started with the African National Congress, didn't find resonance there, and started to see that things were falling apart, moved to the Democratic Alliance, and I applaud the ability to say, this is not the project that we wanted to work towards. When he started seeing that they no longer agree with where his trajectory is for South Africa, he walked out, took some time to reevaluate, to think, to go on the ground and speak to ordinary South Africans through One South Africa and hear from them. Again, that bottom-up approach. What is it that you want? And having then met with different leaders in different sectors of society, we have built One South Africa that we see today. So the experience he had through DA, ANC, and the like gave him that tenacity, that fortitude, the wherewithal to say, let's chart a different direction.
Do you find that some of the criticism and skepticism that he faced while he was in the DA of not being able to attract a black vote will still remain with this new party? And if not, how not so?
I think it is a bit of a fallacy, because the ANC, Democratic Alliance, I should say, we've been talking so much about ANC because of State of the Nation. Now, the Democratic Alliance managed to grow a black vote under the leadership of Mmusi Maimane. And if he goes on the ground any time of day, whichever sector that he goes into, he attracts a large following of black South Africans, white South Africans of all races and ages, which is why even as Build One South Africa, we've thought it important to remind South Africans that he is at the helm of this party, and the same person that they trust as the good guy, as it were, with an ethical track record, is the same guy who is leading us today, and that he is taking the hopes and aspirations of South Africans with him in his new journey.
And on the ground, as you're campaigning, you're busy out there, what are people saying to you?
We've had such a phenomenal response. I since joined the party earlier this year, towards the end of last year, and I've been amazed at how thirsty people are for change. People are tired of rhetoric. People are tired of the same old broken record of, we will fix it, we will do this for you. We're saying to South Africans, let's do it together. We're saying, let's hold hands, let's be the change that we want to see. Don't cede your responsibility and your power to any political formation. Join us as a member of Bosa, nominate your leaders and let them work alongside us, and you will then see representation that you can recall if you're not happy with, because they were not voted for at any national conference, they were voted for by yourself. So we've been absolutely overwhelmed by the enthusiasm with which South Africans have received Bosa.
Now, Ayanda, you know, you've had a wide-ranging career with many, many successes as well, from broadcasting, TV and radio. Of course, the community service that you ran in Dobsonville, in your home, Gussie, in Dobsonville as well, that you've been running for a very long time as well. Of course, there's work that you've done in government, and some may be skeptical and critical when they listen to you and say, look, I like what she's hearing. I relate to what she's saying, and I agree with what she's saying. But I've also seen her be the spokesperson of the then Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, who is now the ANC SG. So how can we trust you this time? What do you say to those who feel that way right now?
Yeah. I think it's important to first ask the question, why did I join government and why did I go into it? I believe that there can be no greater honor than to serve one's God and one's people. And I think I got into that position because I wanted to be able to understand how governance works. I wanted to understand how policy formation and implementation works, to have a better sense of how we can contribute, to have black professionals who are educated, aspiring to work for the state, and not saying, oh no, not government. These days, Masa, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I want to work for Home Affairs, or oh, I want to work for SAPS, and that's my greatest ideal. I wanted to be one of the people who are able to lead South Africans who are gifted, who are skilled, who are talented, back into the state, back into government structures, so that they can be effective and bring about the change that we need. So that was my motivation going in there. I wanted to learn how governance works. I wanted to fix from within, which is something that I've gotten a lot of backlash for on social media. But I wanted to also show people that you can be excellent, you can be a leader, you can work in government. I served for 2 years. I worked for Minister of Transport in the ministry for a good 2 years. And when I saw that I was not able to realize that which I came into the position to do, I then resigned. You know, I then decided this was something that I can no longer do. And in the process, got my master's in public administration to better learn and understand how things work there, looking at the railway sector as my dissertation. And I think it's so important still that people don't give up on working for the state. I would applaud people who are accountants, people who are communicators, people who are skilled in any way, shape or form, to consider working for the state, to consider having their hands in politics, because we cannot leave our country, the running of our country, to people who are not able to do so, because it affects us. We can sit back and say, me, I'm too educated to work for the state, I'm too educated to do 1, 2 and 3. But those who are not will then be dictating to you what your country will look like. I always say that those who are willing to go into the state are sometimes not able to, and those who are able are not willing to go there. So I think it's important for us to get those who are willing and able in key positions in government, and that they may serve. I always say to people, let my work speak for itself. I ask you, take a risk with me, take a chance with me, take a chance on Bosa, see whether or not we won't deliver that country that you want to see.
Before I let you go, Ayanda, I'm just going to speak in a quick cheeky one here. I mean, you said you did try fix from within. Now, while you were within there, if you could just whisper to us, what are some of the, how do we put it, you know, in layman's terms, the bad things that you saw when you thought, this can't be right?
I think for me, the biggest disappointment, which is something that I must take personal responsibility for as well, having spoken about it and tried to decorate it a little bit, as it were, or spin, as other people have to say. And I must concede, and I must also say, I take responsibility for that, the situation with the railway sector. I think the dilapidation of rail infrastructure, PRASA in particular, is something that we are not proud of and ought not to be proud of. There was a wholesale looting and stripping of that entity. It is shameful. People were not able to travel. It became worse under COVID. It was not new under COVID. We cannot blame that on the apartheid government. That was fully on not only this administration, but also in particular our time, those who were there during the period of COVID-19. We take responsibility for that. And for me, it's shameful that no heads have rolled. It's a disappointment that there's been no consequence management. Nobody at PRASA Crest has faced the music for billions of rands of rail infrastructure that were looted, that was stripped, that was stolen, that lay in decay. And for me, that is shameful. And I think that for me was one of the things. It was an incremental decision. It was not something that I just, thought about overnight. But that was the final straw that broke the camel's back, that made me realize, what will I say to my children when they ask, you were there at the helm, you were there protecting those at the helm when the rail infrastructure was decaying, as it were. What did you do? I wanted to be able to say to them, when I saw I could not fix, I packed up and left.
And we've seen the domino effects of that failing railway as well on our roads too. Ayanda, thank you so much for coming into studio and sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.